Welcome back. It's really great to have you with us today for another deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Because whether you are prepping for a big briefing or maybe trying to catch up on global events or you're simply curious about the actual mechanics of how the world works behind the scenes, you are in the right place.
You definitely are.
Today, our mission is to unpack a major, rapidly unfolding global event. And we are doing it by examining just one highly detailed primary source.
Right.
We're looking at a YouTube transcript from a Fox News broadcast. Specifically, it covers a live military press conference featuring Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper.
And they're providing really comprehensive updates on what they're calling Operation Epic Fury.
Right, the current military conflict between the U.S. and Iran.
But before we go any further, we need to pause and make something explicitly clear to you, our listener.
Yes, very important.
The source material we are breaking down today contains highly politically charged statements. It includes direct perspectives, strategic rationales, and rhetoric straight from the Trump administration.
Right, and we want to be incredibly clear that we are strictly remaining neutral here. We are not taking sides.
Not at all.
We are not endorsing any of the military actions, the political viewpoints, or the rhetoric mentioned in this press conference. Our sole mission today is to impartially break down the factual claims, the statistics, and the military strategies presented in this specific source material.
We just want to help you understand exactly what is being communicated on the world stage without any external spin.
Exactly. We are treating this purely as an exercise in information gathering.
Right, looking at what the administration and the military command are stating publicly about their operations, their goals, and their perspectives. It's about understanding the architecture of their strategy as they present it.
And, I mean, the scale of the conflict they are describing is immense. Just to give you a sense of what we're covering today, we'll be looking at everything from B-2 bombers dropping 2,000-pound penetrator weapons on deeply buried targets,
To the incredibly complex logistics of global military alliances.
all the way down to the stark reality of the U.S. military literally capturing enemy drones, reverse engineering them, and firing them back.
It's a lot to cover.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's look at the raw data from Day 6 of Operation Epic Fury.
Admiral Cooper noted that there are currently more than 50,000 men and women in uniform executing this mission.
50,000. And the air and sea campaigns outlined in the briefing are, they're staggering in their sheer volume.
According to the public briefing, in just a 72-hour window, the U.S. bomber force struck nearly 200 targets deep inside Iran.
Nearly 200 targets.
Including strikes right in the capital, Tehran. And you mentioned those 2,000-pound penetrator bombs earlier. Those are highly specialized munitions, specifically dropped by U.S. B-2 stealth bombers. They are designed to pierce heavily fortified, deeply buried underground assets.
Which in this case means they are targeting subterranean ballistic missile launchers.
Exactly. But the target list extends beyond just missile launchers.
Right. The source mentions they specifically struck Iran's equivalent of Space Command.
Yes. And the stated goal there is to fundamentally degrade Iran's ability to threaten Americans from an aerospace perspective.
And then, looking at the maritime devastation, the sea campaign appears just as intense as the air campaign.
The U.S. claims to have sunk or destroyed over 30 Iranian ships.
Over 30. And one detail from the briefing that really illustrates the scale of this maritime conflict is the destruction of a massive Iranian drone carrier.
Yeah, that stood out.
The ship is described as being roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And the command reported he was left on fire after a U.S. strike.
What's fascinating here is how the military command actually measures the immediate results of all this destruction.
How so?
Well, they aren't just counting the number of bombs dropped or ships sunk. They are tracking the statistical drop in enemy capabilities as a metric of success.
Right.
According to Admiral Cooper's stated metric, since day one of Operation Epic Fury, ballistic missile attacks from Iran have decreased by 90%.
90%.
Furthermore, drone attacks have decreased by 83%.
A 90% drop in ballistic missiles and an 83% drop in drones. That is a massive reduction in operational capacity.
It's huge.
To put that into perspective for you, imagine you were in a boxing match.
Yeah.
In the past, the strategy might have focused heavily on intercepting or blocking your opponent's punches.
Right, playing defense.
But what the administration is describing here is fundamentally different. They are systematically dismantling the opponent's ability to even make a fist.
The briefing actually refers to this as leveling Iran's ballistic missile industrial base.
The industrial base.
Yeah, and this represents a critical shift from a counterforce strategy, which focuses on intercepting weapons in the air or maybe destroying them on the launch pad, to a counter-value or industrial degradation strategy.
So they aren't just fighting the deployed military.
Exactly. They are erasing the manufacturing base. They are destroying the actual factories, the supply chains, and the infrastructure required to build these weapons in the first place.
Because taking apart an industrial base ensures that even if hostilities pause, the adversary cannot easily rearm.
Right. It takes years to rebuild sophisticated manufacturing facilities.
Which brings up a really critical question about the rules of engagement. Because if a military is systematically dismantling factories and deep subterranean infrastructure, they are operating under a very different philosophy than we've seen in recent decades.
A completely different posture. And that shift is a major theme throughout this briefing.
Yeah, Secretary Hegseth drew a very stark contrast between past military actions and the current operation. He specifically referred to past conflicts as dumb, politically correct wars.
Characterized by vague objectives and restrictive, minimalist rules of engagement.
Right.
He contrasted that past approach with the current operation, which he stated operates under maximum authorities and an ironclad will.
And in military terms, maximum authorities means what exactly?
It means that the commanders on the ground, like Admiral Cooper, have been granted wide latitude by the President and the Secretary of Defense.
So they don't have to ask permission for every little thing.
Exactly. They do not have to run every single tactical strike decision up a long, restrictive bureaucratic chain of command in Washington. It decentralizes the decision-making process, allowing for a much faster operational tempo.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because with all this talk of ironclad will and maxed-out authorities, the briefing also exposed the reality of geopolitical friction that happens behind the scenes.
Oh, the Diego Garcia situation.
Yes. During the press conference, a reporter brought up a logistical drama involving the United Kingdom. The source noted that the UK initially refused the U.S. access to the Diego Garcia military base.
Which is a highly crucial strategic footprint. It is a militarized atoll in the Indian Ocean, formerly a British Indian Ocean territory that the U.S. leases.
Right.
And it is positioned perfectly to project power into the Middle East and Asia. A reporter actually used the phrase semper gumby during the briefing.
Semper Gumby.
Yeah, it's military slang meaning always flexible. The reporter used it to ask how the command adapted to this Allied roadblock.
And Hegseth noted that it was unfortunate the British didn't immediately grant access, pointing to the complex diplomatic reality that even steadfast allies can hesitate during rapid military escalations.
But the U.S. did eventually secure access to the base.
Yes, the briefing states they are now using Diego Garcia to run what they call bomber pulses.
Bomber pulses.
Right, instead of a continuous slow drip of airstrikes, a bomber pulse is a massive, coordinated surge of firepower designed to overwhelm enemy air defenses all at once.
And the command plans to run more of these pulses more frequently, alongside additional fighter squadrons.
But the friction with the UK is just one piece of a much larger geopolitical puzzle here, because Iran's actions seem to be completely redrawing the map of alliances across the entire Middle East.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a massive unintended consequence of Iran's strategy.
How so?
Well, according to the briefing, Iran has actively attacked 12 different sovereign countries. By lashing out at nations that might have otherwise preferred to remain neutral or stay out of a direct kinetic conflict, Iran has inadvertently altered the geopolitical gravity of the region.
Pushing these countries directly into the American orbit.
Exactly.
Hegseth mentioned that countries like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait are now actively stepping up.
They are offering to fly alongside U.S. forces.
Right, defend airspace with the U.S. and provide additional basing options. The administration is framing this as the consolidation of a unified resistance, sparked entirely by Iran's own wide-ranging attacks.
And while this massive consolidation of alliances is happening in the Middle East under the jurisdiction of SENTCOM, the administration used the briefing to heavily emphasize its global multitasking capabilities.
Right, because to understand this, it helps to know that the U.S. military divides the globe into geographic combatant commands.
SENTCOM is laser-focused on the Middle East, but the briefing made a point to mention that INDOPACOM, the completely separate command handling the Pacific and Asian regions, was simultaneously coordinating the sinking of an Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean.
And the global reach didn't stop there. The briefing also highlighted that SOUTHCOM, the command responsible for Latin America and the Caribbean, is currently operating in Florida, hosting an 18-country counter-cartel conference.
The public messaging here is highly intentional.
Definitely.
The administration is projecting the image of a global power capable of locking down its own hemisphere, disrupting cartel operations, and simultaneously executing a massive multi-theater war in the Middle East and the Indian Ocean.
However, the physical battlefield and the movement of ships and bombers only represent half the story.
Right. The other half is the intense information war occurring simultaneously. The fog of war is incredibly thick right now.
According to the press conference, Iran has completely shut down the internet within its borders.
The U.S. command claims this is a deliberate, desperate move by the Iranian regime to propagandize to their own people. They are trying to maintain control by hiding the severe reality of the military losses they are suffering on the ground.
And the briefing directly addressed the disinformation stemming from that blackout. There were specific rumors coming out of Iran claiming that 500 Americans had been killed, alongside a very specific rumor that an American F-15 pilot had been shot down over Iraq.
Which the U.S. military command flat out debunked. They called them fabricated lies, and deception meant entirely for domestic Iranian consumption.
Fighting an adversary's inflated claims in the media is a classic dynamic of modern information warfare.
It is. However, the command did somberly acknowledge the real human cost of the operation.
Yes. Hegseth confirmed the return of 6 fallen Americans to Dover Air Force Base, which the source referred to phonetically as Deauville, the traditional site where fallen U.S. service members are received back onto American soil.
Taking a moment to acknowledge the solemn reality of those casualties really grounds the sheer scale of the conflict we are discussing. The human cost is very real.
It is. And moving from the human element to the logistical realities of sustaining this operation, the briefing detailed a fascinating economic war happening in the skies.
Yes, the command discussed the critical concept of flipping the cost curve in modern air defense.
Because in asymmetric warfare, the victor is often just the one who doesn't go bankrupt first.
Exactly. Just a few years ago, the narrative surrounding drone defense highlighted a highly unsustainable financial equation.
Right.
The U.S. military was frequently forced to fire highly sophisticated $2 million interceptor missiles just to shoot down relatively cheap $50,000 enemy drones.
And you simply cannot win a long-term war of attrition with that kind of math.
No, you can't, but according to this public update, that cost curve has been successfully flipped.
The U.S. military claims they are now shooting down $100,000 enemy drones using $10,000 U.S. weapons.
Finding a low-cost, highly effective solution fundamentally changes the economic stamina required to sustain a long-term air defense campaign. It means the U.S. can afford to defend its airspace indefinitely without draining its military budget.
And that economic shift brings us to a highly unusual tactical detail from the briefing regarding drone warfare.
The command discussed a specific drone platform they referred to as the Lucas.
The Lucas.
Yes, and the details surrounding this platform showcase a unique kind of tactical ingenuity. The U.S. military apparently captured an original Iranian drone design.
And instead of simply studying it for intelligence purposes, they ripped out its internal components, retrofitted it with superior American technology.
Essentially stamped "Made in America" on it.
Right, and they are now mass-producing it to fire right back at Iranian targets.
It is a striking move on multiple levels. Not only does it align with the goal of cost-effective warfare, but the psychological impact of hitting an adversary with an upgraded version of their own weapon design is significant.
It demonstrates a level of rapid adaptability that counters the historical narrative of a slow-moving, bureaucratic, military procurement process.
Well, absolutely.
But as we look at these high-tech weapons, the changing economics, and the geopolitical chess moves, we have to ask how this operation is actually impacting the people living on the ground in Iran.
A reporter specifically asked about the internal Iranian front, focusing on the Iranian protesters. There is a long, well-documented history of citizens protesting against the regime inside Iran.
And the U.S. administration's message to those protesters right now, as relayed directly from President Trump during the briefing, is very specific. Stay home and lay low.
The reasoning provided is purely based on physical safety. It is simply not safe to be out in the streets or gathering in public spaces with the sheer volume of U.S. and Israeli munitions currently dropping on targets inside Tehran and across the country.
The administration's stated stance is that there will be an appropriate time for the Iranian people to come out and seek a free Iran. But during this heavy bombardment phase of Operation Epic Fury, they need to stay out of the crossfire.
And this guidance to the Iranian public ties directly into how the U.S. is selecting its targets. The military command emphasized that they are specifically hunting the headquarters and the personnel of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the Bassi units.
These are the specific paramilitary and internal security forces of the Iranian regime that have historically been responsible for violently suppressing, arresting, and targeting the Iranian protesters.
A reporter actually raised the tactical concern that these regime commanders are intentionally gathering in sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and residential areas to hide from the bombings.
Essentially using the civilian infrastructure as a shield.
Right. And while the military command didn't give away their exact tactical playbook for minimizing civilian casualties in those scenarios, they reinforced their broader strategy. By relentlessly targeting the specific security forces that oppress the protesters, the U.S. is attempting to erode the regime's capability to control its population from the inside out.
Just as the operation aims to reshape the internal dynamics of Iran, the press conference also made a sharp pivot to address the ripple effects on U.S. domestic policy.
Yes, a reporter asked a pointed question regarding the homeland. They wanted to know whether this military action would result in the U.S. taking in a wave of refugees from the Middle East,
which is a situation that has frequently occurred during past overseas conflicts.
The response from the administration was unequivocal. They stated there is absolutely no plan to take in a wave of new Middle Eastern refugees into the United States as a result of Operation Epic Fury.
The briefing suggested that there are plenty of other countries in the region capable of providing that humanitarian support if it becomes necessary. It is a clear reflection of the administration's broader, strict focus on homeland security.
And that focus on the homeland led to another domestic update during the military briefing. They confirmed a leadership shakeup at the Department of Homeland Security.
The briefing mentioned a transition away from Kristi Noem, noting she did an excellent job securing the border and setting the department up for success, and announced that Mark Wayne Mullen will be stepping into the role.
They framed it as a routine administrative change, noting that everyone serves at the pleasure of the president, and expressed full confidence that the U.S. borders will remain secure during this massive overseas conflict.
So what does this all mean? We have covered a massive amount of ground by unpacking a single press briefing. We have moved from the raw power of B-2 bombers dropping 2,000-pound penetrator weapons on deeply buried missile factories to the friction and rapid adaptation of global alliances.
We explored the shifting economics of drone warfare, the harsh realities of information blackouts, and the domestic policy shifts happening right here at home.
If we synthesize the core theme of this source material, Operation Epic Fury represents a massive, multi-theater display of overwhelming force.
It really serves as a real-time case study in how a modern military attempts to combine high-tech, precise weaponry with rapidly shifting global alliances, all while simultaneously fighting an intense information war against a regime that has plunged its own people into a digital blackout.
That is exactly why this matters to you, the listener. It is incredibly easy to view these events as distant headlines or abstract geopolitical concepts. But what we are looking at is how modern warfare intertwines with the very fabric of global society.
Right.
The dismantling of an industrial base impacts global supply chains. The friction over an island base like Diego Garcia highlights the fragility and necessity of international diplomacy.
And the shifting cost of shooting down a drone directly dictates the economics of national defense, which ultimately impacts the economy you participate in every day.
This raises an important question, what I want to leave you to ponder on your own.
It builds on the tactical ingenuity we discussed regarding the captured Lucas drone. The briefing highlighted taking an enemy's drone design, retrofitting it, stamping Made in America on it, and firing it back.
Right.
If modern warfare is shifting toward this kind of open-source, reverse-engineered combat, where a military can simply capture, copy, and mass-produce their enemy's cheap technology on the fly, how will that change the fundamental nature of the global arms race moving forward?
It's a huge shift.
If the strategic advantage is no longer strictly about who has the most expensive, exquisite missile, but who can copy, adapt, and produce cheap technology the fastest, the entire paradigm of military dominance shifts completely.
That is a profound thought to end on, fundamentally challenging how we measure innovation and security in the 21st century. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the primary source realities and rhetoric of Operation Epic Fury. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking closely at the primary sources, and we will catch you next time.